Hey, Closet Busters, come on and gather around. It's time once again to kick down those closet doors of life. We're here to escape our BS, explore our fears, and elevate our self-expression. I'm your host, Rick Clemens, bold move expert and coming out coach, and I'm going to take you to the party, the pulpit, the wake, and back to the party of living your life uncloseted. So come on, grab hold of yourself and get ready to step out, step up, and step into living your truth as we explore more stories, tips, and tricks for living your life uncloseted. Now let's get to the show. Hey there, Closet Busters and Bold Move Makers. This is Life Uncloseted. I'm Rick Clemens, your host, Bold Move expert, and coming out coach. And you know what? Here at Life Uncloseted, we truly live by the motto, screw it, I'm going to kick down the closet doors of life. I'm going to set myself free. And I'm going to live my life uncloseted without apologies. And I can tell you you're in for a real treat today, because if you had to live your life without apologies from a prison cell, you just might be surprised what happens. So I want you to imagine that for most of us, probably prison isn't on our bucket list of things to do. But then suddenly you got conned and you got pulled into something that caused you to lose everything, or pretty much lose everything. And you ended up in jail living with murderers and drug dealers and really the essence of broken humanity. You felt isolated. You don't even have any time really to, see your husband or daughters except when they may be able to come visit you. And everything has been destroyed. Well, today we're going to talk about being in prison, which in and of itself is truly a closet. But for today's guest, just talking about this being in prison was her closet for many, many years. And now she has taken the step up, turned it into a powerful speaking career. Her talks are lessons from the lockup, as well as a couple other books that she has written. And I'm so excited to welcome a very new friend to the podcast, Trish Jenkins, who is coming to us from down under in Summery, Australia. So welcome to the Life Uncloseted podcast, Trish. I'm really excited to have you here with us today.
G'day, Rick. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, and this is one of my fellow National Speaker Association people. And I can tell you, anytime I get to interview someone from National Speakers Association, I know we're going to have a beautiful story, and we're going to really go in and we're going to find some ways to help those of you who are like struggling or finding that pathway to get out of that uncloseted space and really just go into what you're supposed to be doing in life. So why don't we kind of roll back the clock, Trish, because this all happened to you and it was kind of crazy how it all came about, right?
Oh, it really was, Rick. My husband and I had a real estate thing where you buy one, you pretty it up, you use the equity to get another one. And we had an amount of success and done well, but I was looking for other things that would help things along. And I met a fellow who was a currency trader, and we put some money with him and it went well. And then he asked me to be a representative, and he was also trying to get his license, and he ended up getting a license to do that. You guys would call it a mutual fund. It's a managed fund. So I ended up working for him. And what I didn't know was that he was a crook. And what he was running was actually a great big Ponzi scheme.
Wow.
He was Australia's Bernie Madoff.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yeah, it was just incredible. And
so this is really just the start of this, is the epitome of being in a closet, but you don't even have any idea that you are stuck in this closet of what's going on in life.
You have wandered in what you thought was something great, and then the closet door shut behind you. You don't even know.
Can't even imagine.
You don't even know.
It's interesting because there's been a couple of guests that have been on the podcast, and we've gone into it this way because sometimes the closets we go into, we have no idea we're getting ready to step into these closets. And then suddenly we're trapped. And it sounds like that's exactly.
Yes. And often it's because our naivety is also a closet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
At ourselves.
Yeah.
You need to be educated. That's why I wrote 2 books on fraud warning signals since then, so that other people wouldn't go through what I did. But, I was there and it was going very well. We thought we were very successful. And then with Ponzi schemes, eventually they implode on themselves. Mm-hmm. And I still didn't know, but there was a month in 2005 where suddenly there was no payment for the investors.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, I had 6 figures in myself. Now, I could afford it because it had come from our equity and so on. But here's a free tip. When it comes to investing, the number one rule, there are only 2 rules. Number 1, never invest more than you can afford to lose. Mm-hmm. And number 2 is see rule number 1. Mm-hmm. That's it.
I love that.
So if you overextend yourself, I'm visualizing a closet where you step in and not only does the door shut, but you know when you go through a screen door and it really kills, it really bites you? Yeah, it's like it gives you a slap on the way in. But anyway. So,
but here's the thing that's happening right now as I'm thinking through what you're saying, which is just powerful stuff. Just the thought of rule number 1 of not going and, putting in more than you can afford to lose. I'm going back to my own journey, finally coming out of the closet, and that actually is a perfect metaphor. I finally got to the place where I could no longer put any more energy to hiding in the closet. I couldn't lose that anymore. I couldn't do it because I was losing more energy. I was losing more dignity. I was losing my own self. And it had become so deep that I just absolutely couldn't afford to lose anymore. And that was the moment I finally said, this has got to stop. Now, in your case, obviously some other stuff brought it all to a head, with all the money invested. And then suddenly you find out this fraud. So take us a little bit deeper into that side of the story there.
Well, when I made payments to people, he said, the market's done this and this, and it wasn't guaranteed, and I just need to compound their interest this month. So I had to tell people that's what was happening to my money as well. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard. It was hard to do that because by nature, I'm a people pleaser. I'd like to keep things happy and positive, and that was hard to do. And then the second month came along and some people demanded their money back and they got it. So it was actually reassuring to know that he did give people their money back. But by the 3rd month of people calling me, emailing me, turning up at my house, asking, begging, demanding money.
Wow.
I just could not take it anymore. I was a wreck. And some money came into the company and I said to my boss, look, these people need to be paid. Can I just use this for now and balance it up next month? And he said, yeah, okay, do that. Now, I knew that it wasn't the right way to do it. I had no idea how serious that was. And even though I didn't steal it, what I did was a breach of the Corporations Act. And so I gave people their money, and during that process, someone actually complained to the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, which is like your SEC. And I went along to the interview and I said, well, this is what I've been working at. And by the way, I did this thing to sort of help balance things up. Please tell me what to do to fix things up. I could have replaced that money from my line of credit. And they just said, you did what? And I thought, And then the tone changed of the interview. And the long and the short of it is I was advised to go into voluntary liquidation, which I would not recommend to anybody. Because once again, my naivety, they said, yeah, we will sort you out. Our job is to sort you out and get you back on track. No, their job is to basically sell up all of your assets and pay themselves their hourly rate until you have nothing left. That's what liquidation is, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, someone professional could argue with me with that, but I've never had someone actually argue the point. It's actually what happens.
It's crazy.
And you might as well just open your wallet and your bank and just go, here you go, that's it.
Take it, run with it. Yep.
Yeah, and when I left, papers charging me with fraud. Well, it was called dishonestly gaining an advantage. They never did establish what the advantage was, but I knew in my heart that what I had done was not the right thing to do. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to have to. In Australia, we have a saying called cop it sweet, which means you'll cop what's coming to you and don't complain because it's coming to you. I had no idea I was looking at jail time. And in fact, I could have got a fine for what I did. But if you remember, 2008 was the global financial crisis.
Yeah.
So people were touchy about monetary matters. And I went to court in January 2009 and I came home 8 months later.
Wow. The irony here, though, is at the core of what you did it in the best interest of other people. which
the road
is
to hell is paved with good intentions.
Well, it's just so ironic because as I work with individuals in different ways, but I'm going to go specifically to the coming out journey of coming out in your sexual orientation. So often the whole core of coming out is I'm doing this for the better of everyone so that I can be true, so that I can be honest, so that I can be real, especially someone like myself who came out later in life after being in a heterosexual relationship. And as much as that's done out of the goodness of the heart, it's oftentimes when everything, as you said, the tone of the interview changes and suddenly you are the bad guy or the bad woman. And I totally get that because there's a lot of shame and guilt and, deception that comes along with this. But here you were doing what you thought could be the best thing to do to help other people, in a way knowing, you know what, I probably shouldn't quite do it this way, but in the moment, in the heat of the moment, it sounds like this was the best possibility you had to rectify the bad situation.
I could have any other option. Yeah, there would have been other options. There would have. But in that moment, my judgment was so clouded and the stress, my mental health was so affected that I couldn't be objective, and all I could see was that one way out. And so often in life, people find themselves in a tight situation and they think that I know what I'm about to do is wrong, but I cannot see another way out. Prison is full of people who did things for love, for example. Like a lot of the women in prison are in there because their idiot boyfriends are doing burglaries and different things like that, and they feel like they have no choice but to be an accessory because they love them. And I kind of think if that boyfriend really loved them, they wouldn't let them get into trouble, but that's my moral standing point. And look, there's going to be fallout whichever way you go, and I know I looked at your website, and as bold as you are about coming out to your family, that must have been so painful.
Well, it is. And I think this is why I love what we're doing with this podcast at this point is we're bringing the parallels into life of how painful any kind of coming out is. Your journey alone. So this whole thing happened to you. And even as, you and I were doing the pre-show stuff and you were sending me information, the real pain continued because then this happened and you really wanted to do something even more good for people so they didn't get caught in this, but you kept yourself in a closet. You didn't want to talk about this experience because it was so shameful, I'm sure, and so devastating. And, anytime we hurt our families alone, and I know there was, no intentional hurt towards your husband and children, but it's just what happened. So you got to that space where you found yourself in yet another closet of, I'm not going to say anything.
Well, it kind of started, I came home, look, I'm very fortunate that my husband is a rock. He said, look, we've got 3 little girls to get through this. At the time of my incarceration, my big girl, Chelsea, was 10. And we have identical twin girls, Felicity and Olivia, and they were 7 at the time. And, they were without their mummy for the best part of a year, which is really hard. And we moved in with my parents so that my mother could mother my girls and my dad could be there for my husband. But I came home, and here's the thing. When you're in prison, you think that when you get out, the worst day outside has got to be better than the best day inside. And you have this idea of how it's going to be. And you may have thought that to other people in their situation. They think, well, once this is ended, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be happy and we'll just get on with life. But when I came home and I didn't know I had post-traumatic stress disorder. And it was like it came with me. And I would have dreams of still being incarcerated and not supposed to be there and trying to get out. And I'd spent about a year recovering and getting help. So I didn't immediately pop out and go, ta-da, I've got some lessons to show you. It was really tough. And I understand that fear of sharing. You don't want anyone to know. I wondered if it was written on my head.
Exactly.
It's criminal. And when I went to get a job, you would fill out the application and then there would be the question, do you have a criminal record? If yes, give details. Well, so much for paying the price.
Well, it's something you can never get away from.
It's so humiliating. I realized, I wanted to go to bed forever. I wanted to stay in that closet. because it was familiar, it was comforting to a degree. There were days where I just go to bed, pull the blankets over and just not think about anything or watch TV.
Well, in its own way, it was a safe space. It was, of all the places you could go, at least here, I can go here. Yeah. And I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to deal with people. I don't have to talk about it. And so many people find themselves in this space who are coming out. Yeah.
So there is something we get out of, and you feel like a victim.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You feel victimized. Yes. I felt like a pariah in my own society. And, when we do that and we stay there, it means that there's something we're getting out of it, and that becomes unhealthy and toxic. There is a time for hiding away to heal and recover. I mean, animals do it. They'll go and tuck themselves away and, lick their wounds. There is a time for that. But you see, I had 3 little girls who'd been without their mummy. Mm-hmm. And for me to stay in that place would be to keep punishing them. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I had control over. Mm-hmm. I could make myself get up and be the mummy and be the wife. This man loved me and stood by me, and he deserved someone stepping up and responding to him. And we're a team. I thought they've stolen everything else from me. They're not going to take my marriage or my family.
Right.
So became very diligent about that. And then there came a time when I realized it was very hard to get a job, that I thought, well, what can I do? What do I have to offer? And that's what I would encourage people to do, is when they're considering whatever closet they're in, and it's not necessarily that they're gay, as you know, it's like lots of things. What do you have to offer? Can I encourage you to take your eyes off your flipping little self?
Yes.
Stop focusing on self.
Yes.
And look at what have you got to offer, and who are the people around you that can benefit from that. Mm-hmm. And so I started with my first book, which was the lessons that I researched all about fraud warning signals to start with. And I went to a local business group here, and I used to go and I'd say, I've got this book coming out, and I just tag along with everybody. And then I spoke to the president of one of the groups and had coffee with her, and I said, look, I need to tell you my story because I want to know whether I should let people know and if there's anything. And she said, oh my goodness, Trish, you have to speak to this group. They have to know and they need to be warned. And so that gave me encouragement. And what I actually found is when I offered the gifts that I had, people overlooked, not everybody, some people still gave me a hard time, but not as many as I expected. And because I was kind of expecting rejection, it wasn't so bad. But what I actually found was that they warmly embraced me because they were grateful for the value that I brought.
Well, I think too, Trish, it's something that happens at least, and I think this may be kind of what you're referring to too, is there's a piece of your story somehow that will touch every person because there's some piece of them that they can see in your story, even if they didn't go to jail. Yeah. Even if it was, oh my God, how I've got to be the mommy, I've got to be the mommy and I've got to get up, or I've got to be the parent, or I've got to be the spouse. As you were saying that, I got chills because it's like, yes, this is the essence of what I try to help people start to see. You're being given the opportunity to show up in life to help somebody. It may not be what you think it is, but you're going to show up and people are going to be helped just by hearing the story, even if they don't ever go to jail.
That's right. And, you're so right. Coming out of the closet is not about now I get to be selfish and do what I want because I'm being true to me. It's if that's where you stop, go back in.
Yes.
I don't want to know. There's enough selfish people out there who are all about look how great I am and I'm going to say my truth and it's what? Go beyond that and grow. If you're going to go through the pain of coming out and stepping out with what you have, then offer it. Have the courage to offer it. Rick, I didn't even know whether I'd be allowed into your country, but I was invited to come and speak at a finance conference, and I had to fly to Sydney to be grilled. Like I had to go online and fill out all these questions because America's security is pretty, they're sticky beaks. They want to know where your birthmark is, and that could be embarrassing if they need a photograph.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've got some in delicate places. So, and it's so humiliating because I want to detail everything. But I went there and they gave me a visa because I can't get a regular visa waiver like other Australians can. And then every time I go I land at LAX, I get taken to the special room. Mm-hmm. You know that when you watch those Border Patrol shows and you've got that room where all the dodgy people sit waiting to be, I'm one of them.
It gives you something to look forward to at the end of a 20-some-hour flight, right? You get to get off that plane and go, okay, I get to go into that room before I actually get to even see sunny California.
Yeah, I mean, the only disappointment is they don't frisk me because I could really use a massage at the time.
Exactly. By that point, a massage would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, even if it is from someone with gloves on and big muscles. But hey, you take what you can get.
Exactly.
But the thing is, my message is more important than my pride. Mm-hmm. And when I see the reward, when I share keys that helped me to cope and also to recover, and people get it and they're grateful, that makes everything worth it.
I'm curious about the coping because
yes,
there had to be so much coping in jail and coming out of jail in so many ways.
Look, it really was. I have a phrase about you've got to take care of your mental ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Your mind works in an ecosystem. Things come in through your eye gate and your ear gate that you have to filter. It's like, birds can fly over and they can crap in your hair, but you don't have to let them nest there. Right. People use that analogy, but you have to be very careful about the things you indulge in and expose yourself to, whether it be unhealthy TV shows or unhealthy conversations, sitting around. It was very hard in prison to ignore the negativity because people just want to sit around and bitch. Yeah. Can you say that in America?
I can imagine.
Yeah. Because they are the biggest victim. They've committed a crime. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, most women in prison, over 90%, have had some sort of sexual assault that's messed them up. And so, they are stuck in that victimhood. And my default position was to be an encourager because I already knew, I've had 20 years of personal and professional development in business and also church life where we, to do with the words that you speak, that they should be encouraging and uplifting, and you don't sit around and backstab someone. It was hard for me to find other people that I could talk to in a good way, but I did find them. Mm-hmm. I focused on being the encourager, which irritated some people. and of course, also being a Christian, there are some people who blame all they've had such terribly hard lives that they hate God and they hate anybody who might represent him in some sort of a way. So I had that. It was kind of like a reverse persecution kind of thing where I was in the minority and, they sort of saw me as Miss Goody Two-Shoes who's, never been.
But what kept you in that positive space? I mean, I know it probably wasn't all positive, but what kept you connected to God? What kept you realizing one day I am going to, this is going to be done? And I know you didn't serve the full term because you got out in 8 months, but what kept you able to just keep going and be positive when it was time to be positive?
Well, it was my faith. It was that I would spend time alone. The word cell. The word cell comes from a long, long time ago when the monks in their monasteries, their rooms were called cells. And to be penitent, like a repentant person is to be penitent. That's where we get the word penitentiary. They were supposed to be places where people who'd done the wrong thing would go and contemplate what they'd done.
Right.
And they ended up turning into torture chambers, at least in America. So, but that isolation forced me to spend time, and all I had was the presence of God in that place. Now, I know not everybody's a believer, and that's fine. But for me, I was never alone. I always knew that he was with me. But I would ask, and other people can do this in their own spirituality, whatever that might be. But I would say, God, show me how to see these people. Show me how to see differently. And then when I would see these people who were really dysfunctional and horrible and disruptive, I would see them and I'd see them with compassion. And the more that I did that, the easier it was, the better I coped. When I started feeling sorry for I've got to tell you, self-pity is your biggest enemy.
Absolutely.
It's not other people. It's when you start to feel, you have to be ruthless. And when I started to feel sorry for myself, and I started to feel sorry for myself. And then I looked to my right, and there was a woman who couldn't read or write. And I looked to my left, and there's a woman who was glad to be in prison because when she's outside, she's getting belted up at home.
Yeah.
And then there's other women there whose children are all in foster care. And I was just so thankful that wasn't my situation. I thought, and I had a husband to come home to. How in the world could I feel sorry for myself? I could have been on the streets in Calcutta,
You brought up three things that I think are really important here, that it's so interesting to me, the parallel here. So you brought up the self-pity.
Yeah.
You brought up the now it's my turn sort of mentality. And then you also brought up the how can I see somebody else with compassion? Those are the three, if I were to pick three biggest potholes of people coming out of the closet that I think everybody has in common. It's now my turn. When I work with a client who it's my turn, I've given this. I've had a couple of clients who are like, I gave her or him everything. They had the children. They had a good life, blah, blah, blah. As soon as that starts, I've actually gotten to the place where I graciously find a way not to work with them because I know I won't be able to do it without, as a coach, without my own personal stuff getting in the way. Secondly, to help clients really truly see, as hard as it is that somebody's saying, you can't be gay, you can't be bi, whatever it is. And the first thing you want to do is let that really get under your skin and you want to fight back. The ability to start to see it with compassion is mandatory because you're going to be so inundated with that. It's going to be a constant thing. And the more you fight it, the harder it's going to be for you to get through and do the things you need to do to be able to be yourself. And as you were talking, I thought this is ironic that it's the same stuff that I would do with someone coming out of the sexual orientation closet. Exactly the same.
Look, I'm not an expert. I can only...
You are. I'm going to interrupt you and say, you are because you have lived this. I think this is the thing is all of us have lived some kind of closet story that may not feel like it makes us an expert, but we are, because if we've lived something like this where we've been held back or we've been put into a situation where we don't have any choice but to go, okay, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
That closet door is burdensome no matter how it looks.
Look, it is. And I have expertise in my field. Prison has a disproportionately high number of gay people. And, I could go and research studies on why that might be. I guess there's a lot, especially with women, where there's been abuse or different things, or perhaps that they were so unhappy in themselves trying not to be gay that they would turn to drugs and so on, and that has the crime that goes with it. I'm not quite sure why so many prison officers were gay. It was quite surprising.
Well, there is something interesting around that, because I think for prison officers that are trying to I'm going to go from the male perspective, it's a overt masculinity piece that shows up. Okay, if I'm a prison guard, nobody's going to know this. Okay, nobody will see it. And if they're an officer that feels like this is the only place I know I can get away with living that kind of life, they can force a prisoner into the sexual arena. And who's going to believe the prisoner? So I think it's an interesting dynamic that occurs in life. And the other thing you brought up, we didn't talk a whole lot about, was the PTSD. But I'm starting to see more and more individuals who have gone through the lifelong closeting in different ways, starting to really show up with the PTSD stuff because they've held in so much, especially in the LGBTQ community. And I think it's just beginning to go, wait, this is another version of PTSD that people think, oh, you've got to have gone to war or you've got to have been in jail. Now we're starting to see that there's actually some quote unquote normalized life experiences that contribute to PTSD as much as some of the most, overt experiences as well.
You bring up a very good point, because I would imagine that even in the LGBT community, because of the assumption that I'm gay and it's normal, then there might even be a denial of, you can't have PTSD just for being yourself.
Right.
You know, and that's not fair.
No, it's not fair at all.
They don't know, and everybody has their own story. You know, there's a number of women that I spoke to. I mean, some of them who were gay automatically didn't like me because I'm a Christian. Because, you know, there's that historical conflict.
Assumption.
Yeah. I would become friends with them, and I want to choose words that are going to come across the right way. You know, someone's your friend, they're your friend, regardless. I've got friends who are not Christians. I've got friends who are in different circumstances. I've got Muslim friends. I've got different people doing, you know, in different things. But what I try to do is I want to see the person. Okay, here's an example. The most frightening thing that happened to me in prison was not Big Bertha. I was sat down in the office of the woman in charge of the, by that time I had moved to the minimum security, because you go through maximum to be assessed.
Right.
And, you know, and I sat down with her across her desk. She's in her button-down uniform, navy blue, short cropped hair, very formal, very stiff, up straight. She's got papers on her desk. She's got boxes that need to be ticked. And she's looking at me and she's quizzing me. She's asking me questions. This is shortly after I arrived. She's asking me questions and I'm answering those questions. And I'm the kind of person that this is really important. Like, this is pivotal to my existence here. And I was trying to connect with her so she could see me and see who I was and where I might fit. And the questions she was asking, I could see what she was doing was she was not looking at me. She was evaluating my responses for how I would be managed. And I sat there realizing I was right in front of her, but she didn't see me. She saw prisoner D4257, even though she called me.
That's so common. We sit in front of one another and we don't see each other.
We don't see. I'm not going to sit in front of someone and say, oh, this is the gay friend.
Yeah.
It's not. This is Fiona. This is Sarah. This is Daniel. And I will connect with them. And if they want me to pray for their need, I would do that. You know, I would, because I was known as someone whose prayers got answered. Some incidents happened that got me in trouble in the chapel service where I prayed for someone who collapsed and I was accused of assault.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's a whole nother show right there.
That's a whole nother show.
But it's amazing because what you're bringing up is so interesting to me, because I've actually had some conversations, and these aren't shows that have aired. I'm not sure if they will air, because I did a show with someone who actually kind of went off on a whole tangent, but said, I was trying to come out and be who I wanted to be in my work life. And I had so many Christians praying for me to be that person, and I just couldn't handle it. These people are idiots. And it's like, okay, there's this new closet. You're coming out. You want to be, this person really wanted to be an entrepreneur. And he worked in a fairly faith-heavy sort of environment. And it was amazing to me, because it's like you took something that was actually probably a really beautiful gesture and you made it really ugly, you know? And it just goes to prove the closet stories and how we go through this and the support we get. It all comes from many, many different directions. So
it can make us touchy. And look, Rick, if someone is praying for you, it means they care about you.
Exactly. They're doing what they know best to do from their perspective.
Yeah.
You know, it's no different than me. It would be no different than me as a coach going, you know what, I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader. I'm going to be there to, you know, keep pushing you along. I'm going to be there to, you know, prop you up. Okay, that's just a different way of support, you know, and I think people oftentimes get all their, you know, knickers in a wad, so to speak, over these things that let somebody just help the way they want to help. And that's what it's
look, and if someone's praying for you in their own time, they're not doing it in front of you.
Right.
So who cares? And what are they going to pray? They're not doing voodoo stuff. It's not like you've got people who are in witchcraft praying against you. What I would pray for people would be the same things I'd pray for anybody else, which would be for their family, for their health, for their mental health. And I would pray for them to have a closer relationship with God, and God can do what he's supposed to do in their life without me trying to mess them up. So I have a lot of compassion, and I don't see them any different, them. I don't even like to say them, my friends. But it's a sticky one because, there are some fundamental differences of belief in those sorts of things. But I don't see it any different to any of my other friends who are, I don't expect non-Christians to live Christian values. Mm-hmm. People are in de facto relationships. They're not married.
Right.
Well, if they're Christians and they're my friend, I might say, hey, this is not right for you. But if they're not Christians, it's not my place.
Right. But I think what you just said is a beautiful space to kind of bring us full circle. What you just said is, I see people for who they are, and I accept people for where they are in their life.
And that's my point.
The essence of living a life uncloseted. People say, and I've had people challenge me. So you're saying you want somebody to live a life uncloseted whose values are completely different than you. I said, that's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah. If that's what makes them happy, who am I to judge that? Now, does that mean I'm going to be their best friend or whatever? Probably not. But the essence of it is, as long as you're not, and this is where I always get in deep trouble, as long as you're not physically hurting someone, which then, now we're starting to define it, but physically hurting someone or emotionally, like so deeply emotionally hurting someone, I think everybody kind of has their own way to do life. But if you don't let people be out of their closets, nobody's really living to the fullest and greatest degree in life. And you've just really shown that today in our conversation. And I
you said that beautifully. And I think the word that that would sum up what you've just said is integrity. Mm-hmm. It's if they live a life with integrity, they're not belting up their partner, and they're not, and just simple like lying and stealing, and there are certain values where it is not a good idea to be that person's friend. If they're doing drugs, and don't get me started on how harmless marijuana is, because, I've seen enough mental illness out of that. So, but that's my opinion on that. Someone else will think of it differently.
Sure.
And I don't get caught up in politics either, because there are things on both sides. I think one thing that when I visit America, people are much more passionate about politics than they are here, and probably getting off on a bit of a tangent, but we have to be, no, I'm not. It's about being objective about your values.
Yes.
Just because you're coming out of your closet, don't embrace every value that society says is okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about being gay, but although it's probably a good example where, you might have people who in the gay community who are quite hedonistic, but that may not suit you.
Right. You're stepping right into a beautiful place where I think we can really wrap this up. Think of us as speakers. Yeah. We could any one of us who's a speaker entering the speaking world could hook, line, and sinker swallow. This is how you speak. This is how you go do the speaking circuit.
Yeah.
That speaking circuit and doing it that way is not in alignment with your values. Doing yourself, the audience, and the people you are meant to be serving by being a speaker at their event a huge service. And this is, to me, the whole uncloseting of everything in life. Look at it of how you're being of service and how you want to show up that best reflects who you are as a person, as an individual, because that's where you're going to have the most impact in the world in your own way.
Yeah. Be yourself, but be your best self.
Absolutely.
Be honoring and be respectful. You can be yourself in the speaking arena, but there are some speakers that I won't listen to.
Yeah.
Because they say
exactly.
It doesn't align with. Someone wants to drop the F-bomb every third word.
Right.
I think, well, what have you actually got to say that's of value that you have to you have to throw these extra things in? But that's my value and so you're just so right. You've got to be yourself, but be your best self, and remember who's around you, because your best self. I know it's popular to be all about self and not worry about what other people think. Well, you know what? I think worrying about what other people think, you don't want to be a slave to what other people's opinions, but your gifts are there to serve. So serve.
Absolutely.
Honor people and respect them and care about them. care about them. And if someone, it's like when I do leadership and I say to them, if you don't care about the person you're bringing correction to, you've got no right to bring that correction because you want their highest good.
Yes.
And when you come out of the closet, I'm challenging you with extra responsibility. It's not just about you. We don't live in a vacuum. It's about those you will touch.
Absolutely.
So come out and be yourself, but be your best self. Leave that sookie baby self-pity behind and rise up in your values. That would be my encouragement.
I usually end the show by saying, what would you encourage someone? And I think you just wrapped it up nicely. And I just want to say thank you so much for being you and taking the time to share yourself with my guests and audience members. I know they're going to get so much from the conversation, the beautiful conversation we just had today. So from Clear Down Under, Trish, thank you so much. Can't wait to one day hopefully meet you in person and spend some time together face to face. But thanks for being here today.
Oh, that'll be lovely. Thanks so much, Rick.
And that's it. That's a wrap. Another episode of Life Uncloseted has come to an end. But don't worry, we'll be back in just a couple of days with another episode with new guests, new tips, new tricks, new wisdom about how you can go live your life uncloseted. And you know what? A lot of people out there may not even know we exist. So if you feel so compelled, share us. Tell people about it. Give us a rating and review on iTunes. Share it from your phone. Wherever you can, spread the word, because the more people that we reach, the better the planet will be when everybody is living their life uncloseted. I'm Rick Clemens, the host of the show, that big, bold move expert, and that guy that constantly wants to help people step out, step up, and step into living their life uncloseted. Have a great couple of days, everyone, and we will be right back with you very, very soon. Take care.